Welcome to the Strange Rainbows podcast, episode 9, Count Your Buttons. It's finally here, that special day we've all been looking forward to. I'm talking, of course, about Count Your Buttons Day, which I'm sure I don't need to tell you is the 21st of October. I'm even writing this on CYB Day. Have you counted your buttons yet? Or are you saving them up for after dinner? I'm strangely fascinated by buttons, and I want to have a collection one day, so I wrote a little poem about counting them. Wiktionary.org has 32 definitions for button, but I made up a 33rd, which is a moment's button. I also found an essay Dickens wrote about buttons in 1852, where he writes about their beauty, variety, materials, and manufacture, and wonders that, quote, such industry and so many fine faculties should be brought out and exercised by so small a thing as the button, unquote. We're all writing our own stories in life, although it can be hard to do it intentionally when so many other people are trying to scribble on our pages. I think life writing is a great way for us to capture and reflect on the things, people, places, events, hopes, and dreams of our lives. It's also Everyone Writes Day on the 21st, which is a day for encouraging everyone to write. I'd like to encourage you to write by sharing a quick and easy way to reflect on moments in our life journeys that I call moments writing. Our story today is about one person's unnerving experiences with a very peculiar button indeed. Content warning for allusion to murder, madness, Merlot, and a little light body horror, as well as applying for jobs, which is perhaps the greatest horror of all. Before we get to that fun stuff, let's have a light and whimsical poem. Every moment in a life can be a button of connection, discovery, and joy, and it can be good for us to count them, collect them, and bring them out every now and then so we can really appreciate them. Count your buttons. Count your buttons, every one. I'm sure you have a lot of them. I must have hundreds on my clothes, on shirts and jeans, and I don't know. I got so many buttons. What is a button? Not a clasp or widget, popper, lever, switch, computer, but not piano keys, 'cause they are levers apparently. Be clear when counting buttons. I also got them on my tech, devices I use to connect and write my little funny poems or heat and cool my little home. I got some techie buttons. And when I fire up games and apps, they got some buttons on the screen. More buttons than I ever seen. It changes, so it's hard to count. A nebulous of buttons. I don't have badges, poker discs. I'm not a decoy, pavement mark. No metal globules, 1/12 inch, or punchline, hitman. All the list of button likes I ain't got. I do have buttons that get pushed by careless people who don't care, and then I beep and might explode and make a mess on who is there. Don't press my trigger buttons. I wanted to collect the things, antique and vintage, square and round, and keep them in a little tin along with other things I found, a whimsy pile of buttons. But there's another kind I have. I seek them out and hold them dear, small moments that I feel each day of love, fun, kindness, hope, and cheer. I hoard my moment buttons. Here's 3 I found in the last week. A friendly cat with silky fur. The streets explode with Halloween and dark rainbows of jelly beans. Strange rainbow-flavoured buttons. So that's my buttons. What are yours? 'Cause they all count, and so do you. It ain't you have to number them. Just know they're there. Enjoy them too, and gather button moments. Moments writing. Speaking of button moments, Everyone Writes Day is here to encourage us all to write, just for the fun of expressing ourselves and telling our stories. So today we're going to try something I call moments writing, as a way to write something of our life story, starting with a single moment. Here's how it goes. First, we pick a moment from our actual life. It can be anything happy, sad, interesting or mundane, a thought, feeling, event, interaction or whatever, just a small moment. Then we write down what happened, how we felt, and what it meant. Meaning is the hard part, but it's an important part of why we tell stories. Maybe the moment didn't mean anything, but it could be there's something to learn from it. Here's a couple of my moments, one good, one bad, and one interesting. First, the good one. While I was walking home last week, a scruffy white cat I didn't know meowed at me. It let me stroke its head, and its fur was surprisingly silky and soft. I felt warm all the way home. It means I love connecting with cats, and I want to spend more time with them. Now the bad one. I was shopping in town and there were no trolleys or baskets, so I had to walk all the way through the store to get a basket from the front and then go back for stuff. I was annoyed. Why weren't there baskets? Why is life so difficult and unfair? It means I clearly like to grumble, and I could just chill out and accept that fetching baskets is part of life. And finally, the interesting one. I read a cool fact that humans emit visible light. We glow, although our human eyes can't see it. I felt really curious to know more, so I read about how it's due to bioluminescence from our processing of energy. It means I love learning cool stuff just for the fun of it, and definitely to put in a story someday. Well, those are just examples. I picked 3 small ones, but they could be significant moments from our lives. I reckon this approach to moments writing solves some common causes of writer's block. I don't know what to write. No problem. Just pick any moment from your own life. We all have them. I don't know how to write. It's as easy as 1, 2, 3. What happened, how it felt, and what it meant. I can't write as well as my favourite writer. So what? They don't know your moments, so you're better at writing your own story than they are. It don't need to be written perfect. You don't need to share it with anyone. The moments can be just for you. Write on a post-it or an old scrap of paper and don't worry about style, grammar and whatnot. It don't have to be good. It just has to be. That's it really. This kind of life writing incorporates the 3 main types of writing, which are information, feelings and story. Find the fun in it and enjoy expressing yourself. Will you try it? Here's a couple more of my recent moments to give you some ideas. I found a hand-drawn bookmark in a library book. I got a kind and supportive email from a friend. I saw a tiny bird up close. I overslept and missed a social event. I saw a cloud that looked like a thunderbird with long wispy feathers. My camera took a ghost photo while I wasn't paying attention. Someone liked a forum post I made. I ran out of coffee. That last one was very dramatic, but most of my moments are pretty quiet, mundane and small. I bet you've got some good ones. What was your favourite moment on vacation, with a pet, in the company of a friend, eating tasty food, out socially, or just enjoying quiet alone time? Or what made you mad, sad, or disappointed that you'd like to get out of your head? Pick any one and just write what happened, how you felt, and what it meant. Let me know how it goes. Oh, and congratulations, you are now officially a writer. A peculiar button. It wasn't right that they fired me just for taking a few staplers from the supplies cabinet. It's not like I made much selling them on. The company could easily afford it anyway. Probably they were downsizing and just looking for any excuse to get rid of people. 3 weeks into my job search, I was tired of sitting at home, sending out resumes and trying to connect with people on the socials. I hadn't even had an invite to interview yet. It was so boring. Worse than being at work. I needed cheering up. I'd have half a glass of Merlot in the mornings, just to ease the stressful boredom of it all, but I needed something more. I needed to treat myself to something nice, so I headed into town to browse the shops. Why was it all so expensive? The clothes all looked the same, and they were so pricey in the nice stores. How did they expect someone between gigs to afford it all? I almost walked past the charity shop, then went in. Maybe I could pick up something unusual there, an old vintage jacket or something. Inside it was bigger than I thought, going all the way back. The smell hit me first, the smell of dust and mould. Maybe it was the old books, or maybe it was the old grannies. I looked through the clothes, mostly rejects from the same stores I'd been looking at. I wanted something different. An old woman glared at me with fierce eyes and followed me around. I avoided her, but she grabbed my arm and started babbling. "Do you have it? You have it, don't you? Give it to me." "What? No, I don't have it. Could you let go of my arm, please? Let go." I pulled my arm away and my sleeve ripped. Great, that was all I needed. I'd come out to shop and ended up with less clothes than when I started. Just my luck. I growled at her. I actually growled, and stormed off to the back of the shop to see if there were some better clothes, leaving her mumbling crazy talk to herself. It was darker back there, like the lights didn't reach somehow. It looked like the stock was older, and they had some nice stuff from the 60s and 70s. I couldn't tell if it was original or knockoff. Angrily I shoved the hangers back on the rack. They should be labelled better. A handsome woman of indeterminate age, wearing impeccably matched vintage clothes, stepped out from behind a clothes rack and smiled at me. "Can I help you, dear? Looking for something particular?" Finally, some service around here. I nodded and told her, maybe a shirt or a coat. Look, that old lady just ripped my sleeve. "Oh dear. Let's see if we have the right special something to replace that, shall we?" She led me to a side room, like a stockroom where unpacked donations were waiting to be sorted. And there it was, just draped over a box, the shirt. It had colourful flowers with paisley leaves, a wide collar, kind of ruffled sleeves, and 5 brass paisley-patterned buttons. I reached out a hesitant hand to touch it, and it was silky smooth. I gently ran my fingers along the cloth, enjoying the luxurious feel. But my eye was drawn to one peculiar button, the middle one. It was different to the rest, although superficially it looked the same, made of brass. But this one had patches of verdigris on it, like it was much older than the others. The patterns on it were fascinating, hypnotic, and I stared at them for what felt like forever, trying to figure out what they were. It felt like I was falling, and I reached out a hand to touch it, wondering how it might feel. "Oh, I wouldn't touch it unless you're buying it, dear. Are you interested in this particular item?" "I have to. I mean, I might be." "How much is it?" I bargained, badly. "Well, let us see. What price would you like to pay?" What price? Like how much? Well, I mean, it's got an odd button, right? How about 20? "Done and done. The shirt is yours." She carefully folded it into a paper bag and handed it to me. I held out a 20 from my purse, but she waved my hand away. "Don't worry, dear. I'll collect the price later." "Excuse me," came a shrill voice from behind me. "You're not supposed to be in here. What are you doing?" I turned to see the cashier from the front, beckoning me out of the stockroom. When I glanced back, the stylish lady was gone, so I couldn't ask her whatever she meant about the price. I guess it was free then. I held the bag close to me and pushed past the cashier. Looking for the bathrooms, whatever. On my way out, the granny who'd accosted me earlier fixated on me again. I hurried past and she pointed at me like a body snatcher or something and screeched, You have it. Give it to me." Phew, and I was out. What a messed up place. I needed to find a job, and soon, so I could afford to buy normal clothes again. Back home, I threw the bag on the counter and polished off a glass of Merlot to steady my nerves. I'd earned it. Taking the second glass slower, I unpacked the shirt from the bag and spread it out to have a good look. It was gorgeous, the purples, greens and golds of the flowers setting off nicely against the brass buttons. Again and again my eyes were drawn to the third button, so much older than the rest. I couldn't tell what the patterns were, as they seemed out of focus. Great, my eyes were going, and I probably needed glasses now. Normally I'd have washed it first, but I did not want to wait. I'd just try it on real quick to make sure it would fit. No, I was sure it would fit, and it did, like it was tailor-made for me. As I buttoned it up, the peculiar middle button felt warm and rough to the touch, and rubbing my fingers, I saw a little blue-green had rubbed off on them. No matter, I checked myself in the mirror and I looked exquisite, like a stylish lady from finer times, and that boosted my spirits through the roof. So much so that I sent off another 3 resumes before calling it a day. That night I slept in the shirt. It was just so silky smooth yet warm, so comfortable it could be worn at a cocktail party, a cool bar, or as pyjamas. It was the perfect shirt. The button dug into my skin and some roughness scratched me, but it didn't matter. I was gorgeous in this shirt, and now I felt the world would finally give me what I deserved. The next day, I found 3 invitations to interview from the previous day's applications. What were the chances? 100%, I thought, because I am amazing. About time people started to see it. The first interview was the next day, and I decided, you know what? I'll wear my new shirt to make a good impression. And since I'd be wearing it tomorrow, there was no real need to take it off until then. That night, I dreamed of the patterns on the button swirling around me, pulling me in. I was in a meadow full of green, purple, and gold paisley flowers, dancing with the elegant woman from the store, and I was elegant too. Her eyes were brass buttons, the colour of verdigris, pulling me in ever closer. I awoke refreshed, feeling full of energy. I was going to ace this interview. I didn't bother with breakfast. I didn't need it. I was buzzing. My stomach itched a little, but it was probably just the excitement. I was confident, chatty, and decisive in the interview, and I could tell they were impressed. At the end, the interviewer told me they couldn't officially say yet, but that I could expect a call from them as soon as they checked my references. Check my references. That phrase came back to me on the way home. Would my last company try to stiff me on the reference? They'd better not. I slammed the door at home and reached for a Merlot, but it was empty. When did that happen? I drained the last few drops straight from the bottle and stormed out to the store to get some more. The girl stacking the wine shelves gave me a strange look and asked if I was all right. Rude. I was more than all right. I was gorgeous. The next day, I got an email that unfortunately my application had not been successful and the job was being offered to another equally qualified candidate. Yeah, right, equally qualified. I was perfect for that job. I knew what had happened. My previous manager had lied about me on the reference call. He'd stitched me up. He was gonna do that every time. I knew it now. I should never have trusted him. Shifty-eyed creep. It wasn't right. It wasn't right. Scratching idly at my side, I fumed. It was simple enough to wait for him near his car. I knew where he parked and what time he left the office. The street was deserted when I did it. I made sure to wear gloves and not be seen. It felt so good to do it, and the look of horror in his eyes gave me such a thrill. He wouldn't be giving me a bad reference again. A few days later, I had my second interview. Again, I wore my beautiful new shirt. The receptionist stared at it as I arrived. Jealous girl, of course she wanted it for herself. But she can't have it. It's my paisley shirt. It's my special button. I scratched, my whole stomach itching now. No need for nerves, I've got this. I pressed my lucky brass button 3 times for luck, and that worked all right because I aced the interview again, talking a mile a minute and overwhelming them with my talents and ability. I could tell they were impressed by the shocked look in their eyes and the way they glanced at each other during the interview. I left the room with a flourish as they were conferring amongst themselves. No doubt I could expect a call offering me the job soon, and no bad references this time. My stomach and side of my arms were itching like crazy, so I finished off the Merlot and had an early night. My dreams were wild. I was dancing in the meadow, then swirling through the sky off to faraway paisley galaxies, and at the centre a black hole or something, but made of decaying brass, a giant rotten brass button with verdigris swirling off in all directions. I could nearly make out the pattern. I moved in closer, closer. I could almost... Yes! It was the same pattern as the button, and now I could see it was... I was rudely awakened by a banging at the door. Who was waking me? My head hurt, and I shouted at them to go away. "Police, Miss Price. Open the door, please." Why were the cops here? They wanted to offer me a job too? I straightened out a crease in my beloved shirt, pressed the brass button for luck, and opened the door. Standing there were 3 serious-looking cops, 2 men and a woman. They looked comical to me. "Why so serious?" I laughed, stretching up the sides of my mouth with my fingers to a broad grin. "Miss Price?" I nodded. "We would like to ask you a few questions. May we come in?" "I answered them all at the interview yesterday, didn't I? Have you come to offer me the job?" I sashayed as I led them into the house so they could take in the full glory of my vintage shirt, dazzling them with the bright paisley colours and the delightful brass buttons. I casually rested my hand on my stomach, index finger pointing at the 3rd button. My shirt had a splash of red on it from somewhere, probably where I'd spilled some Merlot. "You've seen it, right? Isn't it captivating? Here, look closer." "Miss Price, we're not here to look at your buttons. Could you tell us where you were on Tuesday night at 8 p.m? You know that feeling when you sober up all at once? That's what I had right then." Where I was? What was he talking about? I'd been here, or out partying, or I didn't remember. I looked around the apartment, taking in the trash, the mess, the uncleaned surfaces, fruit rotted in the bowl, and the 6 empty bottles of Merlot, a wine glass smashed on the floor. My hands were dirty and covered in some strange blue-green filaments, the same colour as the verdigris on the button. The ragged and bloodied old shirt I was wearing had just 1 button, the middle one. What had happened here? My stomach and arms itched terribly, and I pulled my shirt open. My whole stomach was scratched and had tendrils of verdigris spreading out through the veins in my body, pulsing slowly. One of the cops gasped at that, and as I stared at him, he cursed. "What happened to your eyes?" I fought like a wildcat when they tried to cuff me. It took all 3 of them, and I got some good scratches in before they took me away, kicking and screaming. How dare they? How dare they? And now here I am, talking to you in this oh-so-quiet room. They've taken my vintage shirt with its special button from me and given me this one. It's far too tight and not stylish at all. Can't you loosen it? No? It doesn't matter. It's only a matter of time until she visits me here to collect her price. And then we can stare into each other's eyes and dance in the Paisley Meadow. Would you like to join us there, Doctor? Come closer, just a little closer, and I'll show you. It's funny how some stories resist being written and others just write themselves. The original one I had planned about a witchy memoir writing group refused to pop, but this story of a peculiar button just flowed out of my peculiar mind. Don't forget to count your buttons, my lovelies, and watch out for any strange and peculiar ones. Samhain draws near, ghosts swirl through the mists, and the thin times are almost upon us. On Saturday we'll have some Halloween fun, facts and poems over on Patreon. Then on here next week we'll have a dark party to celebrate summer's end and the start of the Celtic year on the thinnest of all nights, on Samhain. Have yourself a delightfully spooky and cozy week. Thanks for listening. The Strange Rainbows podcast is copyright Mike Storm 2024, all rights reserved. It is a work of fiction. Any resemblance to actual names, characters, businesses, places, events, or persons, living, dead, or imaginary, is entirely coincidental.